Hello, my name is Victoria Goldie. I'm a childminder in North East Fife. I'm going to be talking about how we use the outdoors to support and stimulate creativity in our childminding setting. We spend a lot of our time outdoors with a focus on learning through play and exploration in the purpose-built play area we have at the bottom of the garden. We have essentially made this all ourselves. It's very much homemade and a team effort with the older children getting involved in the design and build of the area and its remodelling at every stage. We have a den, a shop, a small world area, an imagination station, water play pipes, gutters, and an ever-growing nature and mud kitchen. It's all been made from pallets, reclaimed timbers, tree stumps, and we even have the sink in the mud kitchen that we fished out of the local river, and it's got the children involved in scrubbing it down and installing it. The children also spend a lot of their time in the garden feeding our hens and ducks, collecting the eggs, which we sell at the end of the driveway. We sow and grow fruit and vegetables in the summer months, and the children very much enjoy the fruits of their labour at harvest time. They can often be found in the strawberry patch or picking the peas for snack time. We are fortunate to have easy access to different woodlands, forests and beaches nearby, which we visit regularly, walking, exploring, den building, treasure hunting, and having picnics. Indoors, we have a wide selection of toys and resources, wooden toys, open-ended resources, lots of arts and crafts, and a cosy log burner for the chilly days or when the wind and rain is very much against us. Here's the main part of the play area. The nature kitchen's in the corner. The logs to the front of the picture are used as table and chairs. There's a cable rail which is used by the children for small world play, as is the tractor tyre. The pipes and gutters are in the middle there. Some of them are fixed in place and the others are left loose for the children to use in whichever way they wish, which more often than not will turn into some sort of mudslide. And the other den is tucked away in the corner there. Here's a closer look at our nature kitchen area. It started with just the small pallet kitchen with the basin insert, and then quite a few summers ago now, when we were out in the woods in the nearby streams and rivers, some of the older boys spotted the sink in one of the shallower parts and were only too happy to hatch a plan and don their wellies and get in and drag it out, and then we scrubbed it up and built it into our kitchen. The children use all sorts of ingredients, log slices and sticks and twigs and pine cones, shells, whatever they've collected out and about, they'll bring them back as ingredients for their kitchen. The kitchen is popular with children of all ages, from the very young toddlers who just like to guddle about with some water and some sand, right up into the school-age children who will create and write up quite elaborate menus and recipes. The younger children learn to use scales, the measuring spoons and the jugs. They gather ingredients. Sometimes they will go and buy them from the shop at the other end of the play area, or they'll just forage around the garden and gather anything from some stones, some sticks, even a pile of weeds to stock up their shop. They spend a lot of time engaging in quite in-depth role play. They take turns at being chefs and customers. Some of the customers are trickier than others, and some of the chefs might be slightly more temperamental than others. It all makes for fun and interesting games. We use wooden chalkboard menus. They practice setting the table, using good manners. They share, they work together, and importantly, they also have to tidy up together. So there's lots of learning through play in this small area. As the children engage with the possibilities the nature kitchen offers, their ideas for recipes and menus grow and develop. Gloop soup and mud cakes are no longer good enough for our current group of children. They have become quite accomplished chefs, even at the age of 4, and love to recreate their favourite food using the natural resources. Some of the current favourites include burgers, which we've made with wood slices, and they add mud, sand, leaves, weeds, all sorts of things as they pile up their stacked burgers. The wood slices are great. They use them for pancake day, and now pancake day seems to be every day. And they mix up some mud, and that's the chocolate spread for their pancake, and they'll sprinkle some pinecone bits and bobs on them. They will use huge pine cones or chunky sticks in between pieces of bark, and that's your hot dog. Risotto is made with crushed pinecone pieces, and we have also got a large jar currently of macaroni, which is made with hollowed out elderwood pieces. They seem very keen at the moment, the current children, on making things look real rather than just gloopy soup or mud cakes. So we're embracing that and trying to make things look as real as possible, as that is following their current interest. Here you'll see one of the children engaging in her favourite part of the mud kitchen at the moment, which is creating pancakes with all sorts of different toppings. She loves mixing up mud and making that as a chocolate spread. We have piles of pine needles, little twigs, shells. Depending on the season, we'll have some flowers. There's always plenty of leaves and weeds around. And during the winter, when there's ice in the bottom of some of the pots and pans and sinks, then that'll be broken up for icy pancakes, or Elsa pancakes as she calls them. Here's another of our little enthusiastic chefs busy in the mud kitchen. He's making mud burgers, and he picks weeds and things to make salad go on his burgers. He's often quite proud of his creations. Here we have one of the children making elderwood macaroni. I taught the preschoolers to use a pan drill a few months ago to hollow out elderwood pieces to do some threading. We were making bracelets and necklaces. One of the children said during the process that the pieces looked like macaroni, and they wanted to make a huge bowl of it for the mud kitchen because the macaroni is my favourite. So we got to work. We have elderwood growing in the garden, so it was easy enough to go and chop a few branches off and give them to the children. I then taught them to use the secateurs to carefully chop the branch into smaller pieces, and then to use the palm drill to hollow out the soft pith from the middle of each piece of elderwood. This engaged them for quite a time. This particular child would sit and do it for over an hour, making a huge bowl of macaroni, and he was absolutely delighted with himself when he'd done it all, and proudly served his mum a bowl of macaroni when she came to collect him later that afternoon. Here's a closer look at our imagination station area, which is in the middle of the play area. It consists of guttering, pipes, wood offcuts, logs, tree stumps, buckets, scoops, crates. We have some of the pipework and guttering is fitted to the pallet walls, and the rest of it is loose for the children to use. And just out of shot, there's some much longer pieces of guttering that came off when we did our roof, and as we never throw anything away, it's now put to good use as the children make different ramps and gutters, and they make different water flow areas or mudslides. And while the younger children are happy to just play with airflow golf balls and some water on the fixed pipes, the older ones like to build quite elaborate schemes which could have water and mud flowing all over the place, particularly when the after school age children get their hands on it. It's great fun for them all. Here are some of our children playing with some buckets of water and the airflow golf balls in the fixed pipe area. They can spend all afternoon doing this, particularly when it's warm and sunny, but in the colder winter months, then they'll be equally happy play with it when they've got their waterproofs and their wellies on, and the pipes and gutters are full of ice and snow. That's always great fun. This is the shop area, which the children use as a role play area primarily to buy ingredients for the kitchen, for their recipes. They stock the shop themselves with things that we gather when we're out and about, whether it be sticks or shells or pine cones. And depending on what games and interests the children are exploring at the time, it can be transformed. And its uses have included a veterinary practice, a garden centre, a hospital, and it was a jail at one point last year. Here's one of the children restocking the shop with items that we found out and about on our walk that day. There's leaves, pine needles, I think there's some dried flower heads and sticks and things there. The children thoroughly enjoy and engage in restocking the shop, and they're always quick to tell me when they've run out of things and we need to go and find more stuff. This is a picture of our original den, which we have had in various locations in the play area. It was quite small, but it was really well used. The play area is constantly evolving, and as we gather more resources to build more bits onto it, and the most recent request was that the den was made bigger. So the older children were only too happy to get to work demolishing it, and the younger ones had very definite ideas on how they wanted the new den to look and how they wanted it to be decorated inside, and they became quite busy one afternoon threading shells to make decorations for their new den, while the older ones were busy demolishing what was left of the old den. Once the old den had been removed and all sorts of bricks and log slices and bits and bobs had been pulled out from behind it, the older children got from the new big stack of pallets, they worked out which ones would fit in the area and which ones were about the same height, and then they used the extra bricks to level them off and came up with the design and structure for the new one. So it took a lot of teamwork, but after a few afternoons and seemingly endless painting by me the next day, their new den was ready for them to move in. Here's one of our little interior designers busy at work, threading shells to make decorations for inside the den. She was very proud of herself when they all got strung up inside. We have a potting shed which we installed last spring next to the play area. It's used in lots of different ways. It's not just as a place to start off our seedlings in the spring. It's been set up as a farm shop. It's used for small world play, for a woodworking zone, and for art and crafts. It's also been caterpillar world when we got some caterpillars from exotic moths from a friend who breeds them, and the children were able to see the total process from the tiny eggs to the small caterpillars, and then as they grew and changed colour and then formed their cocoons before they went off back to the butterfly house that my friend has to hatch into exotic moths. So it has lots of uses, and it's definitely become a very well used area over the past year or so. In the shed, we have lots of natural resources, wooden toys. We have a little small cable drum where the children put out the daily weather symbol for the day, and we have little emotion characters. They'll put out how they're feeling, whether they're happy, they're sad, or they're excited or calm. They will change this display as the weather changes and as the seasons change, and we'll put different messages out using our alphabet discs. We make use of small wooden peg people in here, and we make little houses and things for them ourselves. And some of the little huts you can see in the bottom are actually little play houses or dens, things for hamsters and pet mice, but we use them for the peg dolls. In the play area, there's quite wide scope for the children to engage in small world play. We've got a selection of dinosaurs, animals, different vehicles, figures, the doll's house, and there's lots of natural loose parts for the children to use their imaginations and engage in play. Be from simple dinosaur worlds with logs and things, or diggers in the bark chips. We have a homemade doll's house and pop little peg dolls in it. However, quite often you'll find the dinosaurs have moved in, and sometimes they can be found sitting at the kitchen table being told to use good manners, please. Here are some of the children playing with the dinosaurs from the Small World area. They've taken baking trays from the kitchen and they've got some sand, some water, some stones and some weeds that they've made different dinosaur lands. These boys will engage in this sort of play imaginative play for hours. They'll come up with all different ideas for swamps and deserts, volcanoes and jungles, and I'm only too happy to let them weed the garden in order to build jungles. It's helpful for me and it's great fun for them. Here they are with their much loved dinosaurs again, and building different lands, and they're expanding buildings that they made the previous day. They've got lots of wooden offcuts on that little cable drum there, and the scope for imaginative play is really endless when they have the resources to do it. And it's great to see them working together and coming up with new ideas and expanding on their previous day's play. Going back to the doll's house area with the peg dolls, while playing with the shells left over from threading the decorations for the new den, this little girl discovered some of the shells fitted over the dolls' heads. This is not something that I'd initiated with, or not something that anybody had done before, but just the coincidence of those shells being near those dolls. She discovered for herself that they fitted over the heads, and she was utterly delighted. And she spent time carefully checking which shells would fit which dolls, and giving each one a shell skirt, or if she could stack some of the shells on top of each other, then they were a ruffled frilly skirt. It's just something so simple, but yet it brought so much joy to that little girl that afternoon, and it's something she continues to play with day after day. In the imagination zone area, there's a big crate which is full of fencing off cuts, larger sticks, bits of branches, and rocks and stones, which this child here is using to make a forestry area for the diggers and the trucks, and we have some tractors and toy logging machines and things. So he spent a lot of time making a play area specifically for the dumpers and diggers, and then he played with it for the rest of the day and insisted it was kept as a permanent fixture, which it is for the time being until someone else comes along and claims the area for something else. Out with our own play area, we are fortunate to have lots of scope for outdoor adventures in the local area. We have wooded areas within walking distance, and slightly further afield, short drive away, we have a large selection of forested areas and beaches, which the children get the opportunity to run free through the woods, along the beach, and explore their surroundings. All within a short drive, we have different beaches, whether it be the vast sandy expanses at Tentsmuir, or some of the smaller rocky beaches hidden just off the Fife coastal path, where there are lots of rock pools and different areas for the children to explore. It's all very different experiences depending on which beach we visit. To help encourage creativity in the children when we're going out to the woods or the beach, quite often I will purposefully take resources along with us. These resources enable the children to create things to use during their exploration and play. Examples will include peelers for whittling sticks, embroidery thread for threading shells or wrapping around sticks or cones, and small metal tins for collecting tiny treasures that they find. I've made some little log dwellings, which are a popular addition to our adventure wagon. The children enjoy taking them to different locations and making fairies and elves and other creatures to live in the little dwellings. Taking something as simple as a couple of lengths of embroidery thread to the beach enable these children to use the thread to thread the shells and then tie them onto sticks to make magic wands that day. They put spells on each other, spells on passers-by. Even the gulls who were trying to steal their picnic lunch were given spells to make them go away. By teaching the children to use potato peelers to whittle sticks, they can then whittle their own little creatures, their little elves or characters, from sticks that they find in the woods. They can either then draw faces on them with pen, or they can decorate them with threads or bits of fabric to tie clothes onto them, and their uses are endless depending on the child's imagination. And they can then take these little woodland friends that they make on adventures as we go through the woods, and they engage in imaginative play. Another example of a resource that we'll take with us sometimes when we're going out and about is some calico fabric, or even this particular one here I think is just some cut up old dust sheet that I've taken along, popped some holes in it. The children have then found some sticks which we've threaded through the top to give it a bit of structure, and then they've used it as their canvas for mud painting. The children will gather things like sticks or branches or rocks or whatever they can find to use as their paint brushes. Different children have different approaches to things like mud painting. Some of them are only too happy to get absolutely covered from head to toe in mud, squish their hands in it and squish branches into it, or leaves to make paintings. Others have a more cleaner approach, if you like. Those who are not quite so keen to get filthy will just dip their stick or their paintbrush into mud and then make their painting that way. Completely different approaches with completely different results, but very much reflecting these particular children's personalities. Here they are with their finished results, two very different results from two very different children, and that's as it should be. Every piece of artwork is individual, and there's one huge tree with stormy clouds and rain falling down, and another of some very delicate flowers. I think there's a dandelion in it, and you can see how the children have used their different techniques of painting and transferring the mud onto the fabric to make their artwork, and they're both equally as proud of their creations, as they should be. We have a beehive in the garden, which we use very much as a learning tool for the children, to teach them all about the importance of pollinators and insects in general, to be kind, to be helpful, and to not harm any small bugs and beasties that they may find in the garden. We have various stories, resources, books, and toys for them to play with. And most recently, we have been using small pine cones and some thread to make our very own busy little bees. We took some yellow string and some out-of-date gauze and bandages from the first aid kit to the woods recently, and we found some really tiny little pine cones, which the children then very carefully wrapped some of the string round to make the stripes on the bee, and then used little torn off bits of gauze and bandage to make the wings. This is a great activity for promoting fine motor skills, and not only that, the children thoroughly enjoyed it, and they loved having their very own special buzzy bees. Once they had finished making their bees, they then tied longer bits of string to them and flew them round the woods, and these little bees got very busy pollinating every bit of greenery that the children could find. And then on our way home, they were safely stowed away in their little metal treasure tins to be taken back to the garden, where they continued to pollinate flowers all day long. This has now been expanded into ladybirds with some of the red string, and they have recently started looking for wiggly bits of twig and wood to make into caterpillars with all different colours of string. So they've extended this learning themselves, and whatever we make next is entirely up to them, and we'll see where this takes us. Den building is hugely popular with children of all ages. It encourages problem solving, teamwork, creativity, design and engineering, all while having great fun with friends in the outdoors. We have numerous dens in different local woodlands that we revisit, we repair, and we expand over and over again. The dreadful storms of winter just past did keep us out of the woods for quite a few weeks for safety reasons. However, the debris left behind by the storms has provided vast scope for building new dens with so many fallen branches all over the forest floor. Den building is a great activity when you have groups of children of different ages, from toddlers of age 1 to 2 through to nursery age children, and then in the school holidays we have children up to the age of 10 or 12, just as they're approaching time to leave us to go to secondary school. The older children work brilliantly with the younger ones. They teach them how to build dens. They help them carry bigger sticks and branches. And by all the children working together and helping and encouraging each other, they make some fantastic construction, some really big dens. We've had dens that we can fit upwards of 6 children in, and they can spend a whole day in the woods, having lunch and having snacks and building quite magnificent structures. The older children get a lot from it, from working with the younger ones and teaching them and passing on their knowledge. And the little ones just think the older ones are great because these are these big children, and they're spending so much time with them, and they're helping them, and they're all working together and learning, and it's a really positive day out. They certainly all gain a lot from it, and it's thoroughly enjoyed by all of them. Here's a group of children in recent school holidays. They're mixed in age range from around 2 or 3 to about 10 or 11. They spent quite a lot of time building a den. They had a small campfire where they toasted marshmallows and enjoyed a picnic lunch. The older ones very much taught the younger ones how to be safe around the fire. They helped them with their marshmallows, made sure they weren't too hot, and they helped them build a den, made sure they all had comfy bits to sit in. They floored it, and then when they were on a walk later on around the area that they'd been exploring, the older ones took the younger ones over to the bouncy tree, as they called it. It was a bit of a fallen tree that was in a clearing, and they were teaching them to bounce up and down on it and to play on it. So it just goes to show that the younger ones and the older ones can enjoy a really good day out together, just by exploring and playing in the woods. While taking resources out with us on our walks or days out does help to support and encourage creativity in the children, once they fully engage in the natural environment and exploring and become brave enough to go off the path and into the woods, they will then find endless opportunities for play themselves, whether it be just collecting different types of pine cones and wondering why they're different, and trying to figure out what tree each different type of pine cone has fallen from. One example of a lovely activity that the children engaged in recently was finding different twigs and stick with some tiny pine cones still attached on the woodland floor in this clearing. And this particular stick that did look like an aeroplane, and these pine cone passengers flew all over the woods that day on their holidays. And then there was other pine cones that they put into a bit of rotten wood that had holes in it, and that was another plane. And then it was a boat, and then they were trying to figure out if the wood would float in a puddle that they found, but because the wood was rotten and heavy, it sank. So then we had to explain why it sank and why some wood was floating in the puddle. And there's so much learning that can come from something as simple as a puddle and a bit of rotten wood, or a bit of dry wood, and you can explain so many different things to them, and they can learn so much. And all the time they're simply having really good fun and enjoying themselves. Simple things like running through the forest and gathering up handfuls of autumn leaves and throwing them in the air, or finding the now often sought out bouncy trees, bring so much joy to the children. They absolutely love it. They have a great time. It builds resilience, encourages creativity, and they benefit so much from being out in the fresh air, building up their stamina, learning about nature, and just simply having fun. And to me, that's what childhood should be. And it's certainly one of the greatest pleasures I get out of my job is just seeing how much fun and enjoyment the children have when they're out and about exploring.